The Charlestown neighborhood in Boston has a big problem with bank robberies happening all year round. There are 4 lifelong friends who are really good at pulling these heists off: Doug, Jem, Glonsey, and DEZ. Doug is the one who comes up with all the plans. He gives the others all the details they need to remember before their next job. When a guard walks into a bank carrying a money bag, they see their chance. They push him and go in with him, taking control right away. Everyone inside is told to lie on the ground, and their phones are taken away. At cash registers, they make the manager, Claire Kesey, open the vault. Once they grab all the money, they put the security camera hard drives in a microwave to destroy them. Then, they start pouring bleach everywhere to get rid of any DNA evidence. They don't realize Claire is secretly pressing a silent alarm button with her foot until it's too late. When they finally notice, Jem gets mad and beats up the assistant manager, thinking it was him. As Jem moves around violently, Claire sees his neck tattoo. With the police about to surround them, Jem decides to take Claire as a hostage, something they've never done before. They blindfold her before taking off their masks, then drop her off at the beach once they're far enough from the bank. The FBI takes over the crime scene, led by Special Agent Adam Frawley. He notices the thieves covered every detail and left no evidence behind, which means they must be pros. His team finds the van they used for the robbery, but it's been set on fire, and nobody in the area will talk as a witness. The next day, Frawley talks to Claire. She tells him what little she knows, but leaves out the part about the tattoo because the thieves warn her not to say anything to the FBI. Meanwhile, the 4 thieves meet up to discuss Jem's bad idea of taking a hostage. When Jem shows up, he brings worse news. He has Claire's ID and realizes she lives close by. That means she might see him around the neighborhood often. Jem thinks he should follow her around to scare her into staying quiet, but Doug steps in. He says he'll handle it since Jem's already been to jail once and can't afford another strike. The truth is, Doug doesn't trust how violent Jem has been lately. Later, Doug and Jem visit people in the neighborhood to make Paymensto their gun dealer, car dealer, and Fergie, an Irish mobster who runs a flower shop, as a front. That night, they hang out drinking, gambling, and doing drugs with call girls. At a bar the following night, Chris, Jem's sister and a single mom, approaches the group. She and Doug used to date, and she says she misses him. Doug isn't interested anymore and leaves. Later that night, though, Chris lets herself into Doug's place using an old key, and they end up sleeping together. The next day, Doug starts following Claire around. He follows her into a laundromat and pretends to comfort her when she cries after finding faded bloodstains on her shirt. To cheer her up, he takes her out for a drink. They chat and bond, but Doug lies about working in construction and having a dad who lives in the suburbs instead of being in prison. He even takes her on a boat ride, pretending it belongs to a friend, even though he's breaking in just for this. When Claire asks about all the bank robbers in Charlestown, Doug brushes it off, saying the stories are exaggerated. When Doug meets with Jem later, he tells him Claire is under control and doesn't need to be killed. Meanwhile, Frawley gets a clue. These thieves didn't act like others. They knew how to work the box. This kind of knowledge could only come from working somewhere like Vericom, so they start checking employee records. Frawley also meets Claire for lunch, trying to flirt with her while asking more questions. Claire mentions she's sort of seeing someone. Claire and Doug start dating, though Doug keeps it secret from his gang. As they grow closer, they share more about themselves. Claire admits she's working with the FBI, and Doug acts curious, asking if they have any suspects. She also mentions the tattoo she saw, but isn't sure whether to tell Frawley because it might get her killed. Doug advises her to keep it a secret for now, maybe using it as leverage later to avoid witness protection. In return, Doug shares that his mom left when he was 6, and he tried to find her, but his dad never did anything about it. One day, Claire talks about taking the long way to work because some gang members throw bottles at her car if she takes the usual route. After dropping her off, Doug picks up Jem, and they go intimidate those guys. Doug just beats them up and plants some drugs, telling them to leave town within the week. But Jem goes too far, shooting one guy in the leg after showing him his face. Doug isn't happy with how violent Jem has been lately. Meanwhile, Frawley finds Dez's file as a Vericom employee, whose sick days match the dates of various bank robberies. This helps them track down the whole gang during a family barbecue, though they still lack hard evidence. For now, Frawley orders surveillance on all of them. During a sunny day, Claire and Doug have lunch together. When Claire leaves the table for a moment, Jem suddenly shows up and sits with Doug, making him nervous. Claire returns, shocking Jem, but he plays it cool and chats briefly before leaving. Later, Jem confronts Doug about Claire, thinking it's a terrible idea to sleep with someone who could send them to jail. He hasn't told the others yet, but wants Doug to focus on their next job instead. Doug doesn't think they're ready for it because he doesn't like the guys they'd be working with, so they should find others. Jem insists though, so Doug agrees under one condition. This will be his last job. Before the job, Doug visits his dad in prison to tell him he might be gone for a while. He asks why his dad never looked for his mom. His dad replies that there's no point trying to make a mother out of someone who clearly doesn't want to be one. On Friday, it's time for their next operation. They gather hair from a salon to plant as fake evidence, wash themselves thoroughly, and clean their equipment with bleach to remove fingerprints. Then, they follow an armored truck and rob it as soon as it parks. Things go slowly at first, but one guard tries to fight back and aims his gun at them. With the police coming, they kill the guard and rush back to the car, driving away quickly. They cause many crashes along the way, and when the cops finally corner them, they shoot their way through. Glowsy pulls off some risky driving moves, crashing police cars into each other, and they finally lose them when they switch vehicles with their fourth team member waiting nearby. They burn the previous car to block the cops' path. Frawley orders the bridge closed, but it's too late. They cross it before the cops arrive. As they change vehicles again, they're spotted by a random officer parked nearby, but he ignores them. While Frawley doesn't have solid proof yet, he wants to question them. His agents bring the four in for interrogation. After making them repeat the lines they said to the victims, Frawley tries to ask questions, but Jem stays silent after asking for a lawyer. Doug knows they have nothing on him and tells Frawley they've always known they were being followed by the FBI because everyone recognizes their antennas. Frawley tries questioning Claire again, but when he calls the bank, he learns she quit. Now suspicious, he taps her phone and discovers she's been in contact with Doug all along. Doug finds out she quit when he meets her to give her a diamond necklace, so he asks her to run away with him, which she agrees to do. After their date, Claire is visited by Frawley, who notices the necklace before showing her Doug's profile and revealing the truth. Meanwhile, Doug meets with Jem, who has a new job offer from Fergie. But Doug turns it down and tells him to find someone else because he's done. Jem accuses him of abandoning Chris and her baby, but Doug reminds him no one knows who the father is. Though grateful Jem's family took him in as a kid, Doug says it was never going to be the three of them living happily ever after. Jem points out he once killed a man to protect Doug and went to prison for 9 years for it, but Doug still refuses the job. He then goes to see Fergie, who threatens to do to Claire what he did to Doug's mom if he doesn't accept the job. Fergie reveals Doug's dad went solo years ago, and that's why he hooked Doug's mom up with drugs. She didn't leave. She overdosed, and Doug had been lied to all this time. Doug rushes to Claire's place to check on her, but she kicks him out without letting him explain. From then on, he tries to keep an eye on her apartment, and sees one of Fergie's thugs hang a funeral wreath on her door. Doug destroys it as he accepts he'll have no choice but to take the job. After visiting Chris to tell her he'll be gone after this job, Doug tries to approach Claire again, promising he'll never hurt her because he's robbed many banks, but never killed anyone. He asks her to wait for him before leaving. The gang gathers to hear Fergie's plan. They'll rob Fenway Park the morning after the big game, when its safes will be full. While they go over the details, Frawley approaches Chris at a bar, thinking she might be the weak link. After fake flirting with her, he shows his badge and implies he knows for Fergie. When she asks for a lawyer, he plants doubt by pointing out Doug never bought her a diamond necklace, despite being together for years. Chris gives him a fake lead, so the day of the operation, Frawley and his men follow the wrong truck. Chris visits Doug to ask him to take her with him because she wants a new life, but Doug kicks her out after telling her he's leaving with someone else. Later, Frawley finds her in the hospital after she crashes her car while drunk, and he promises to protect her and her kid in exchange for information. Feeling used, she gives in and tells him about Fenway Park. While DEZ uses his electrician skills to disable alarms and cameras, Doug and Jem dress up as cops and enter the stadium with help from one of Fergie's contacts. They encounter some employees and guards, but their disguise fails, and they draw their guns, ordering everyone to lie down so they can tie them up. Next, they head to the cash room and threaten the employees, claiming they have men outside who will shoot their families if they try anything. Allowed inside, They fill their bags with money, then leave through the parking lot where Glonsey and DEZ wait with an ambulance. The FBI surrounds the perimeter, but as soon as Jem spots them sneaking in, he opens fire. A shootout begins, and Glonsey gets shot, but luckily it hits his vest. As the others continue shooting, DEZ sneaks back to open the door, pushing the FBI's truck out of the way. Doug tells DEZ he doesn't have a police record, so he could walk away and serve only 7 years, and none of them would blame him for it. DEZ feels insulted and stays, cursing Doug. The FBI throws stun grenades, disorienting the thieves, then sends special agents inside, who shoot DEZ as soon as he stands up. Glonsey suggests a risky plan. He'll drive out and distract the FBI, while Doug and Jem change back into their cop costumes and walk out through the main door. Doug worries about Glonsey's safety, but Glonsey promises he's a great driver and knows how to escape. The ambulance drives down the block without issues, but when the FBI can't stop it by shooting at its wheels, a sniper kills Glonsey with a headshot. While the FBI checks the ambulance, thinking all the thieves are inside, Doug and Jem successfully change into their uniforms and escape by blending in with other officers. However, the trick doesn't last long. Employees who were tied up inside informed the FBI they were ambushed by cops, so Frawley starts looking for suspicious officers. He quickly notices Jem walking fast with a big bag over his shoulder and follows him into a parking lot. As soon as Frawley calls his name, Jem opens fire, finding himself surrounded by the FBI and cops. Frawley wounds Jem in the leg, forcing him to hide behind a mailbox. Realizing he's out of bullets, Jem commits suicide by walking out with his guns drawn, causing the agents to shoot him on the spot. Doug doesn't let Jem's sacrifice be in vain and escapes by stealing a police car while everyone focuses on Jem's body. He drives to the flower shop and kills both Fergie and his thug, unharmed because he's wearing a bulletproof vest. Afterward, Doug retrieves some money he hid earlier and calls Claire, who has the FBI listening in on her conversation. Claire invites him over, claiming she's alone, but Doug knows she's lying because he's watching the apartment from a nearby building. He agrees to go anyway, asking her to meet him at the back door in an hour. After apologizing again, Claire mentions sunny days as a subtle hint that it's a trap, and Doug plays along. While the FBI waits for someone who won't show up, Doug hides some money in her garden and leaves a note insulting Frawley on his car. Then,